My name is Samuel Bird. That is who I am as far as my name, what I am called. But the better question is who I am to you. So when you listen to someone speak for the first time, or at least at length, you try to make sense of them, perhaps put them into baskets. You do so by seeing their values, their objectives, if they fit into a social group, and finally, what their ends are as far as you're concerned. What are they trying to help you, hurt you, get money out of you? Like, what's the deal here? And so I'm going to ask you as I speak with you today to sort of take these baskets that you would place me in as the sharer of an idea and set them aside for a minute. Let these ideas be surreal and vibrant and perhaps even absurd to you. Let them come to you as they are, and then sort of afterwards we can tear them apart, reflect on them, try them out, but let them kind of hit you with the realness. There's this beautiful realization I think everyone has to get to at a point in their life where any idea that is not fully grappled with and executed is of very little use. You take the most wonderful, beautiful idea and it's of very little use. Okay? So as we talk today, I'm going to ask that you set aside these different baskets. Now, I'm going to allege who I am and what my objectives are. And of course, then you have to try me and see if that's true, if I've been deceitful to you. So my objective is you. You're something. Maybe not happiness as you think of it. Maybe not betterment as you think of it. Maybe not your pleasure as you think of it. But my objective for you on your behalf and why I go about thinking and engaging with ideas is that when it's all said and done, the work that you and I have done in this conversation, because it's weirdly a dialogue. You're kind of doing this back and forth. You're disagreeing with me. You're having thoughts. You're responding in your mind. This is a dialogue. As we go about this, that when it's all said and done, it is something that you will have valued. And I have specific aims that I'll get to here in a minute. Now, there's an idea that undergirds a generation. And there's smaller versions of this and there's larger versions of this. On the larger macro scale, I think one degree to which comes to mind is constructivism, Kantian constructivism, right? So this brought in ideas of how we're related to the world, like how do mind and world meet? Well, it's in that shoreline, right? We have the synthetic a priori. Don't worry about terminology or anything like that. But the big idea is that truth is what we construct it as far as it is to us, is kind of the idea. And getting this conclusion, he got rid of what's called metaphysics, and it kind of removed the place for the soul. This, again, don't worry about this. But the point is that it became an idea that was the assumption for the people and lives and thought processes that followed after. So as we begin to look at humanism, communism, fascism, the political ideologies primarily, they stem in part and partial from this initial idea. Not that it necessarily entailed that, but that it opened the possibility for it, right? Because if there is only the here and the now and the material, then we have to, on a political level, sort of respond to that, okay? And we get to see over hundreds of years the implications of an idea. The first generation, it's not always so obvious what the outcomes of that are going to be. But over time, we get to see that. And what you can get is this thing called reductio ad absurdum. If we follow the premises and we sort of do our separate proof to find if, we can get to the conclusion or whatever, we can find that if we take the reason at hand, it makes a point where it's inconsistent with itself, that we get a contradiction. Something is both true and not true, okay? And there's examples of this, perhaps, and I'll get into that now. But the point is, I have reason to believe, and try your mind to see if you agree with me on this, that the assumption of thought that we are under now is in need of an advancement. Not necessarily an advancement in terms of to find the trajectory of progress and we figure out how to get to the next step. But almost we figure out how to go a different direction or even a different dimension in space. So, this is proverbial, but you kind of get the idea. And I think we have gotten to that point. Social systems, fiscal systems, familial systems, religious systems, and political systems have gotten to the point where they are trying to grapple with an assumption that is inconsistent with some aspect of their experience, facts of the world or how they meet with each other. There's something in their value and the truth around them that doesn't work with their assumption at hand. So I think we're in need of this assumption. If you can concur from your experience, then we can move on. If not, again, I do apologize. The best I could do with the dialogue. I would like to meet you in person and have a conversation, but we have to make do. So with that being granted, there needs to be this idea. Then we have to figure out what ideas are worthy of doing that and what properties they would contain. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to allow you to do that in your own meditations. What I am going to allege is that I now possess the idea that could be a likely candidate for this grounding assumption for the future. Sorry, my cat's wanting attention. No, he just wants to bite my hand. That's okay. I still love him. This idea is called Esse Maxim. It is Latin for the existential maxim. It's pretty easy to remember that last one. The idea is that when we're engaging with our existence, which is crucial, that is the meta value, the thing before all things, to have mind engaged with world in a participatory back and forth relationship. When we're engaged with our existence, we need a series of things, right? We need a base assumption, going back to the idea of assumptions. As a person, we have objective facts around us and subjective experience, and we have to bring those together. Mind and world have to meet as consciousness and material, and we have to make sense of how to get them to mold. And we can look past the problem all we want, but when it's all said and done, that is philosophically crucial for us to make sense of that. So, to start with, we have a base assumption. Everything you believe, when we follow it down, I ask why, and we argue and debate, realize it's because you assume something, below that we assume something else, and so on down the line. So right now you have a base assumption below all other assumptions, and you might not know what that is. However, as we look at it and begin to dissect it, we can find, well, it's likely this or likely that. But the problem is we find that's inconsistent with other things in our assumption. So this is our base assumption, and we have this, but these two actually cannot coexist. In order to be consistently engaged with our experience, we have to pick one. This is problematic, and we can be like Descartes, I don't know why his name escaped me all of a sudden, and throw out the whole basket. Or we could say, what assumption are we willing to try? And it will result in some absurdities that we will not like, but will at least be consistent and non-contradictory. So we have our founding point of faith. It has been said by many wise people through a long history of time, that was a dumb sentence, that if you can have one item of faith, that any other system could be made sense of after that. The question is can you have that first item of faith? This is our item of faith, that assumption that is under all. Okay, that's the first thing. Second, it bridges our relationship with the world. We look around and there's qualities to our experience, and we're trying to make sense to it. It has this ness to me. It's an essence to me of what it is like. But how should I find it? What is the oughtness of how I should find my experience? How should I? The secret is, can't really find one. However, we can make it consistent with ourselves by having one lens that we choose deliberately to place over our eyes to do this, okay? And finally, we have how it places us in time. Time is a tricky thing, and I'm not going to get into my thoughts on the matter now, but as we're experiencing it and engaging with our existence, we see where we are, this direction we're moving towards with our action and causality and temporal spatial stuff, and then we see that thing that we came from in our memory, okay? So there's sort of those 2 points outside of us, and that 1 point of the moment, which is infinitesimally small and moving from one to the next, and I just took a couple to say that sentence. So what do we make sense of the future with? Well, we fight fate. We grasp any weapons we can hold, and we say, this is not the life that I will, and we fight it viciously and with honor. And then once fate has moved from the future to the past, how do we find it? We find it with honor and respect and adoration and love, and we love fate. So as we look forward in our space towards time, we fight it. As we look back, we love it, okay? So we have our base assumption, that's the grounding of all of our beliefs. We have how we relate to the world as self to world. And finally, where we find ourselves in space and time, okay? That is what Esse Maxim is. And then you find your subjective item that can fulfill those things, and that's worth its own separate conversation. Okay, we've done this now. Let's say that we've done this. We have our Esse Maxim. This is hypothetical, probably needs some time. But let's say that we have done this. Now what? Okay, after we've chosen it, we need to practice it. So right now, as I went about my day today, I was choosing what types of behaviors to have, thoughts to have, experiences to put myself in a position where I would have those experiences. And I had to evaluate not just what was good, but what was true, what was beautiful, and what was meaningful to engage with my existence. Like, how do I do this? Esse Maxim, like pretty much any philosophy, is dead without practice. And as the person who's bringing it into the world, I feel a tremendous responsibility to demonstrate this, to be the exemplar. And part of it is maybe a little bit of guilt to make sure that I'm doing what I need to do. Part of it is, if we want to know what an idea can possess for us, to some degree we can look to the ideer, or the person that brought about the idea. How consistent was it with their experience? So if I'm able to prove it to some degree as being an effective X, Y, or Z in my life, perhaps I could do the same for you, okay? And we affirm it in doing such. When it's all said and done, when things mean something, is when they're committed to. When we've committed to them and made them something, okay? And this allows us to commit to something so deeply and have a vessel to pour our soul into that is, when it is said and done, there is something to contain your soul. And if we need to adjust some things, let it be done. This is what I call God killing. We have to go through and reassess and address our Esse Maxim. I'll get to that in a second. Actually, I'll get to that now. We will prove our Esse Maxim. Proving it to ourselves in the sense of proving that it is either worth what we are doing or not. Again, the best way that I have found to do this is a reductio ad absurdum. Because we can't just say that we don't like the outcome of Esse Maxim, because it's the grounding assumption for everything, including morality, which I'll get to in a second. So if that is the case, then us saying that we don't like the outcome because it made us do something that was stressful or weird, insufficient. Because our liking it here doesn't change that it's concrete here. But what we can do is see if it is logically inconsistent with itself from assumption to... Be nice to each other, guys. From assumption to a further down the line outcome. Or perhaps we find that our Esse Maxim is inconsistent with facts of self and world, okay? So self is a dynamic variable. We're changing, not just in the sense of we're changing over time, but our perception of self is changing. You could not change it all if that was possible, and then still be changing the sense that you're discovering new aspects of yourself. The mind is an incredible thing, and the world certainly is dynamic. Also, while our perception of it is dynamic, as we're always assessing, getting new information, okay? So, Esse Maxim is, again, this operator, this concrete operator we're making sense of these two dynamic variables with. However, if it's not consistent with facts of self and world, for example, it's cognitively destroying you from the inside out, I'll be honest, that would seem like an Esse Maxim not worth having, okay? Now, we have said what Esse Maxim is, what we must do. Let's talk about what it will do if we affirm and live Esse Maxim, and then further why I am sharing it. So, again, it's a structured relationship to know the self and world in terms of each other, and it'll answer the questions of value. Value is a big deal. You do not find value in the world. You find it in the mind. However, you find the instance of the thing that is valued only in the world. So you have two halves of something that exist apart, and they only meet in our experience, in our existence, or in our Esse Maxim, okay? So I'll give you 4 examples, which are my favorite. So we have 4 different types of things. We have being, which would be like, not necessarily a conscious being, but the nouns of the world, the stuff, the things. We have doing, which would be our verbs, our actions, our energies. Then we have facts, that's information before it's conceptualized or synthesized. And finally, we have emergent properties of such, okay? So those exist in the world. But as a conscious entity, I don't just assess things. I assess things in terms of who I am and my evaluation of them, okay? Value doesn't exist here, it exists here. And again, going back to the assumption, the grounding assumption that we have right now in at least the time that I'm in, is that, you know, the soul is a problematic thing, and so value is sort of the material trying to get the resource it needs. But we get to the hard problem of consciousness and separate question down the line. But we have these 4 things: being, doing, facts, and emergent properties. As value, they are manifest in the mind as the following: being as beauty, doing as the good, facts as the truth, and emergent properties as meaning. Let me sort of make sense of this. So when we have being, we have a series of facts, right? And they are something that we value. They're beautiful. If the sunset series of values is valuable to you, then that's beautiful, okay? We have doing. If a verb is of good quality, it is good. It is doing an action that we find good, okay? Now, truth is a complex thing. My favorite definition is, well, I like to go with the idea that something exists both in the mind and the world, but it's only a fact in the world, and when it becomes an epistemic thing in the mind, then it finally becomes a true. So if you just have stuff and no perceiver, no cognition, it would not be true by my definition. Again, just to make sense of the words, I'm using them different in the context that you've had up until now. And then finally, the emergent properties. So out of all the things that we have, consciousness makes sense of them, and it has this ness about it, this what it is like to experience these things. So it's beautiful, it's good, it's beautiful and ugly, it's good and it's evil, it's true and it's false, or these should have been disjuncts, not conjuncts, right? But then what's the emergent properties of all these facts come together? Our experience across time. It is meaning. What essence does this elucidate in the conscious mind, given these other 3 types of facts, right? As nouns, verbs, and information, okay? So what we've done is we've made a grounding for the rest of your ethical, aesthetic, epistemological, and existential, I don't know if I did that in the right order, I think I did, experiences. So if you're trying to find what's good, true, beautiful, worth your time and effort, we would look at how it affected you or related to your Esse Maxim. And again, we don't do this as armchair philosophers, but as entities distinctly involved in the existing experience, okay? So what are we getting out of this? What are you getting out of this? You get to have the good. The beautiful, the good, the true, and the meaningful. So that's one thing. We get those things that we need. The second is that we're preparing for death. More and more, as I talk with people who are close to death, they have taken so little time to make sense of their dying that it hurts me to watch how they're about to go into the abyss, and perhaps on the other side of the abyss there's X or Y or Z, but they don't know that. And neither do I. We can choose to have faith, perhaps based on our Esse Maxim, but still we walk into the void. I seek to prepare people for death. At the very least, my mission is thus, that when a person looks back over the course of their life, that they can say that they valued their existence, that whatever cost it incurred from them in terms of the detraction of their values, the misery, the pain, the ugliness, the bitterness, the this, that, and the other, the strain, that they can say it was a cost-effective experience. Imagine if you could say that of your life now. You could justify your existence sufficiently that you could say the life you live is worth living. What a wonderful thing. I don't know if I have the words to say what a thing that could be. But you probably have an idea of what that would be to you. Finally, again, our objectives are to give you those 4 things, to prepare you for death, and finally to make room for the human soul. The modern age has become genius at making sense of what it is to be human, right? It knows this, that, the other about the material aspects of the brain. It knows about well, I guess all that time reading all those books about physics was a total waste of time. But there's a lot of knowledge around the operations of the world and ourselves, okay? What it is failed to do consistently is to acknowledge what it is like to be human. When it does its social engineering, when it looks at building systems of morality, when it's giving permission what belief systems are worth our time, it has failed to acknowledge what it is like to be a person. It knows the stimuli to get people addicted to its systems, but it fails to make sense of what it's like to be us, the quality of the conscious mind engaging with its experience, to perceive from the mind into the consciousness, to evaluate that and to execute. It has very little idea of what's going on. And we can say, well, we are the material, and that's fine to a degree. I could give that. But if we define the real as the material, then if people talk about the immaterial, they're obviously going to be made fun of for it not being real. But we're just playing with definitions. The more that I've looked and thought about the hard problem of consciousness, it is hard because we are fools to try to explain the universe and not be curious about the explainer. How is that not interesting, to say the least? Now, I could be wrong in everything I just said and everything I've ever said. However, I still think it's worth saying. So one of my objectives, the third, is to make room for the soul. I don't think that has been done. I don't think the depths of who you are has been affirmed by the world around you sufficient. That it's been acknowledged. That it's been permitted. When it comes to you engaging with things that are celebration of what it's like to be a human being. The religious, the sentimental, the familial, the mystic, the mythological. There's sort of this idea that it's impermissible to do so. And to some degree, like, not all ideas are created equal, and some of those could be individually silly. But we are the beast that seeks to kneel for something. Because again, when we commit to something, we find that when we pour our soul into something, there's something that can hold it. We have the vessel. And it will be said that there's nothing singularly necessary that we must pour our soul into. There's so many ideas available for this. That is correct. However, if you are going to have your soul held, you will need for it to be poured into something. If your Esse Maxim is this or that, it's resolvable. However, to have one is that you have something that can make your life worth living, meaningful, beautiful, good, true, because there was something that you are committed to. It's contingent what it is, but it's necessary that it is. So, we have covered what Esse Maxim is, how we work with it, what it will do for us. And again, I close by saying, what is the means for this? It is Esse Maxim. It is that idea of us at a grounded level engaging with our existence and our conscious experience via one properly basic assumption. But we get back to that question. Why? These are the ideas I'm saying. Whenever someone says something, always ask, what's their motivation for saying it? So I'm saying these words and their ideas, but what is underlying it? Again, you have to come to that conclusion on your own. But I asked you at the beginning of this to set aside your putting me in a box. And now I give you permission to do that because you've listened sufficiently. But if I could ask that I go into a certain box, it would be a box of friend. I do this for a concern for the conscious entities around me that haven't had permission to be a soul, that haven't been prepared for death, that don't have the good, the true, the beautiful, and the meaningful, and don't have an assumption to give them a grounding for assessing such. I love you.